your #1 news team covering the North. The Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
Welcome back. Some controversy on social media this week surrounding the sale and delivery of alcoholic beverages. It is alleged that a store in New Providence was advertising a delivery service for alcoholic beverages. That move sparked the question as to whether or not the liquor stores are allowed to be open with the emergency orders in effect. A local activist says there may be a need to relax some of the strict measures. Italia Hall has more.
Commissioner of Police Anthony Ferguson says anyone caught selling alcohol can expect to be prosecuted, as it is a breach of the emergency order as well as a breach of the liquor license, as persons are not allowed to serve alcohol anywhere that they wish. Under the orders, only grocery and non-alcoholic beverages can be delivered. Local activist Joseph Darville once led an organization called Operation Hope in the late 80s, which helped persons with various addictions. Now, he says for years, the Bahamian culture involves socialization, which includes drinking alcohol, and with all of the liquor stores closed, it is becoming a challenge for some.
A lot of Bahamians, probably 90% of them, socialize and they drink as they socialize, and to be shut at home and not having access to that openness or that alcohol availability, I think that has taken a serious toll on them, because as you know, Bahamians generally, probably 25 or 30% of Bahamians are addicted to alcohol.
Now, for persons who struggle with excessive drinking, he says this period may assist them with their addiction. But for those who are not addicted to alcohol, he believes that delivery services should be available to the public, but with limitations.
That gives us a kind of socialization that we need as a people. And I think to a certain extent that might be something that if we're going to close down the country for a whole next 30 days, we may have to take a look at that. Because I personally would like to be able to drive to a place and buy my little bottle and bring it home and enjoy it, with my wife at home. Without that, I think we're going to cast a whole dismal aspect over the country. We're going to have more problems. We might deal with the alcoholism, but we're going to have many more problems related to stress and probably violence and so forth.
Darville says he supports all of the Prime Minister's decisions as it relates to combating the COVID-19 pandemic, but believes this aspect deserves a second look.
If you got a little wine in your home, that's good. Even the Bible said, it's good for the being, for the heart. So, that's it's not a repugnant thing. It's a natural thing in nature. And so we should not demonize it, but we can control it. And I think we have it under control to a good extent, whereby the Prime Minister can probably modify it a little bit so people are able, even if they were to put a kind of cap on the amount that you could access during a particular period of time. All of this goes with sense. And I salute the Prime Minister, what he's doing, and he has been wise enough to modify certain things.
Now, Darville is asking any person who may struggle with alcoholism to contact him as soon as possible, as he is willing to help. His number is 727-0212. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Reports circulating on social media this week questioning the health of workers at the Freeport container port. ZNS News has been reliably informed that management of the transshipment terminal has a doctor on hand who checks the temperature of employees as they arrive and leave the container port. Reports say it has become a routine practice as a precautionary measure to protect employees, their families, and the public at large. A similar checking system is in place at the airport and at the Freeport Harbor. The airport is now closed, but the harbor is open for vessels arriving. However, no one is allowed to disembark any vessel arriving at the port. COVID-19 pandemic also impacting the daily operations of the Immigration Department, with officials advising that business at its Cornelius A. Smith Government Center has been suspended. But earlier this week, immigration officers making some arrests. Colombian nationals Pablo Enrique Diaz Token Pica and Hector de Jesus Galeo Gomeza and Orlando Jose Garcia Ocha appearing before Magistrate Rangan Johnson. Diaz Tokenpika, who was charged with overstaying, pleaded guilty to the charge, was convicted and fined $2,000, or in default, served 6 months at the Bahamas Department of Correctional Services. Gallego Gomez was charged with misleading an immigration officer, possession of a forged passport, and possession of a forged immigration stamp. He pled guilty to all charges, convicted and fined $25,000 on each count, or in default, serve 9 months in prison. They were ordered deported to their home country. The two men were arrested outside a business establishment on Carl Road earlier this week. Officers say the men were questioned while sitting in a vehicle and the infractions were uncovered. Both men paid their fines and were escorted to the Carmichael Detention Center to await repatriation. Memorial services held for family members, friends, and well-wishers in honor of a departed soul is one of the ways that those who are grieving come to terms with their loss. As more and more persons are being urged to practice social distancing and to limit social gatherings to 10 persons or less, families are now being forced to make tough decisions when planning these services. Tonight, we hear how one funeral home is adjusting. Rumiko Knowles has more.
The practice of social distancing to slow the spread of the coronavirus has closed businesses, canceled schools, and postponed weddings. It has altered the way that we come together, and now it has changed the way that we say goodbye. Funeral homes are adapting to reduced attendance at end-of-life celebrations. Managing Director at Russell and Pinder's Funeral Home, Bertram Pinder, says in all of his years of being a funeral director, he's never dealt with anything of this sort.
You know, we are all cognizant of the fact that we have to be safety conscious most of all, and I think the families generally understand that, as hard as it may seem, and so they you know, we're going along with the order.
Since the emergency order came into effect, Pinder says Russell and Pinder's Funeral Home were having graveside services only. Now the entire family is allowed to view their loved one and say their goodbyes, but only 10 persons are allowed into the graveside services. This, he says, was extremely difficult for grieving family members to do.
Well, you know, the average family, like for instance last week, you know, both families were really big families, and it was really hard in trying to decide who is allowed to be, you know, under the tent with the 10 minimum persons, and so that is what I mean by hard on the family, because you know, if a family has 10 children alone, that means that you're looking at an average of 15-20 persons, and so but only allowing 10 persons to be in the immediate area, that's really hard on the family.
Now, although funeral customs has changed, Pinder says safety is of the utmost importance in order to avoid the spreading of the virus and continued isolation.
We just need to, as a people, we are people that trust God and look to Him, and so we just need to just continue to pray and trust Him, and He will see us through.
Rumiko Knowles, ZNS Network News.
You're watching the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Stay with us.